In this video, you will see material may be considered inappropriate or sensitive for you, therefore discretion is advised. We begin with this woman who wakes up unable to move while she sees a terrifying creature emerge from behind her after the wall opens. The creature passes over her and then lands on top of a man who is still sleeping. It pulls out a very sharp and pointed dagger, and at that moment, the man wakes up, but the creature stabs the dagger into his chest, then in his face, and continues to do so repeatedly until he is left stiff in a pool of blood. Then the creature turns its eye towards the woman, and she wakes up screaming from what seems to have been a nightmare, but I assure you, it is not. But first, let's see how we got to this scene. It all begins in 1993, in a research hospital, where we meet a doctor named Weaver. She makes a recording in which she explains that Gabriel is becoming increasingly strong and malevolent, warning that if his strength continues to grow, they will not be able to contain him. However, she remains determined, and just before she can finish speaking, she is informed that he has escaped again. As the doctor goes to the location, the guard informs her that it is in the archive room. The lights begin to flicker and a loud noise is heard. A doctor tells her that they have not been able to control it, and that in fact, the creature controls the electricity and the devices in the place. Upon entering the room, a doctor is thrown across the space and the guard readies his rifle to try to sedate the creature. The doctor attempts to enter but is prevented from doing so, and they witness another doctor being slammed against the window. Weaver orders them to immobilize him. The guard slowly opens the door, but as he enters, his hand is caught and his bone is broken. At that moment, the lights in the place begin to explode, leaving them alone with the red emergency lights. The doctor grabs the rifle and shoots at the creature, which emits a loud sound in response. Now the doctor sees the bodies of her colleagues lying on the ground, covered in blood everywhere. Behind her, another doctor enters, along with two guards, to whom the doctor instructs to put restraints on the creature. They do so, dragging it into a room marked with a radioactive symbol, all under the surprised gaze of the doctor. Then the doctor tells the creature that it has behaved badly and calls it by the name Gabriel, saying that it is time to punish it. This is where we see the true appearance of the creature, which has an extraterrestrial form. The creature continues to control the devices and tells the doctors through the radio that it is going to kill them all. The surprised doctors watch as the creature expresses its feelings through the radio. The doctor tells it that she tried to help, but that it is time to strip away the cancer. We then see a series of images of experiments and operations. It is also mentioned that the patient controls electricity and speaks through the speakers. And finally, they mention the name of someone named Emily, who is Gabriel's mother, and left him in their care. A long time later, we see this woman who is pregnant. She arrives home and checks the crib, then goes to the room where she finds her partner named Derek. He tells her that he thought she would be working late, to which she responds that she is not because he is bothering her. She proceeds to turn off the television to rest, which annoys Derek, who tells her that she should stop getting pregnant. He also reminds her that the doctor told them they could lose the baby again. The woman blames him as well and pushes him. He turns against her and pushes her against the wall, hitting her head quite hard. Derek, scared, tells her he is going to get some ice, and the woman takes the opportunity to close the door. Later, as she leans back, she notices a lot of blood coming from the wound. The man returns and insists that it was all an accident, but Maddie does not let him in. Later that night, while Derek was sleeping on the sofa, he hears the blender turn on. After turning it off, he sees the refrigerator open by itself. Now the television is on, and with the light from the TV, he sees a shadow sitting on the sofa. When the man turns on the light, the shadow has already disappeared. As he approaches, he notices that the cushion is just starting to return to its shape. Then the man goes to the dining room, and that terrifying shadow is right behind him. It grabs him by the head, and the sound of what happened wakes Maddie, who is quite scared. Maddie notices that blood is still coming from her head, so she goes in search of Derek. When she arrives downstairs, she finds him with his neck broken and his head tilted back. Now the woman, quite frightened, sees a terrifying shadow emerging from behind Derek, with a face covered by long hair, and it starts to walk towards her in a very strange manner. The woman tries to leave the house, but this creature prevents her by closing the door. The woman begins to crawl up the stairs as best as she can, pursued by the creature. She manages to enter a room and close the door, but the creature tries to get in. The woman tries to stop it, but the creature pushes her inside along with the door, causing her to fall and hit her head, leaving her unconscious. Later that night, the house is surrounded by police. Officer Rec and the agent enter the house. By the way, if you're at this part of the video, it's because you're enjoying it, so I invite you to like the video, and if you're new, subscribe by activating the notification bell. All of this is completely free for you and helps me a lot. Now, let's continue. Whitney tells them that this only compares to injuries from a traffic accident, which Koa is surprised to see. The next day, Maddie wakes up in the hospital next to her friend Sydney, who tells her that Derek has passed away. Maddie responds that she was scared mostly for her baby, but then she realizes that she has also lost him, which leaves her quite devastated, and she begins to scream desperately, removing the devices. Sometime after Koa arrives at the hospital where Maddie is, he tries to interrogate her, when Sydney arrives and tells him that she has been like this for several days, not even receiving food. The officer tells her that her sister has had 3 miscarriages in the last 3 years, and gives her a card in case she decides to talk. After Koa arrives at the morgue, Rek tells him that the hand marks on the neck are reversed, as if the killer were hanging from the ceiling, but there are no traces on the ceiling either. Rek also tells her that Derek was abusive and that it could be the reason for the crime. 2 weeks later, Maddie and Sydney arrive at the house. Maddie says that this time it really seemed real when talking about the pregnancy, and even though her sister tells her to go somewhere else, Maddie stays and goes inside. Later that night, after taking a bath, Maddie sees the streetlights turning off and on. As she approaches the window, Maddie notices a strange shadow of someone who seems to be watching her. But when she turns on the light, it disappears. Maddie, frightened, runs to secure the doors, windows, and curtains. But when she reaches the last door at the back, she notices it has already been opened. Maddie closes it and starts to hear sounds throughout the house. Then the door opens again, and now Maddie runs around the house being watched from above. She reaches her room and repeats to herself that there is no one else in the house to try to calm down. The next day, Maddie secures all the doors with screws. Moments later, her sister arrives and tries to enter but is unable to. Now Maddie is looking at the hole left by the impact in the wall and gets a huge scare when she sees her sister through the window. Once inside, Maddie tells her that Derek did that to her and that every time she tried to leave him, she ended up pregnant. She also says that she wished to have her own child and confesses that they are not biological sisters since Maddie is adopted. Sometime later, we are with Maddie, who is showing some people an ancient tunnel where she tells them that some ghosts still wander. After the tour, the doctor turns off some lights, and from the depths of the tunnel, some knocks are heard. The woman approaches to check, then another louder knock is heard, and the woman, quite scared, manages to turn on the lights, but when she looks up, a strange creature dressed in black lands her. The next day, the woman wakes up gagged, tied up by her hands and feet, hanging from the wall of an attic. Then she sees a creature tearing something apart. This strange creature puts on gloves and a sack and walks with some difficulty, using chains for support. Through the radio, it tells her that it has waited long enough for this moment, but that she is not the first, rather it is Dr. Weaver. It calls Dr. Weaver, saying that it is time to rip out a cancer. And although the doctor is a bit confused at first, she seems to realize what is happening. She goes to her library where she also keeps several awards for excellence and takes the file from that time. Back with Maddie, as she picks up the clothes, the radio starts to malfunction just like the lights. The radio emits an annoying sound, and then as Maddie goes down, she notices a figure passing in front of her. In the room, the sound of the radio is even louder. Maddie notices that the wound on her head is still bleeding, and she eventually makes her way to the washing machine. While she is doing the laundry, a female figure appears behind the washing machine lid, giving her a tremendous scare. The woman shouts for it to leave her house, but now Maddie notices that she can't even move. And not only that, but this terrifying creature appears behind her again, which Maddie cannot see. This creature grabs the woman, who is the doctor, drags her by the hair, and slams her in the living room. Now, the place begins to transform and becomes the home of Dr. 2000, where there is a television on which the phrase, "It's time to strip the cancer," is heard. Then the doctor appears, and the creature lashes out at her again and again, before throwing her against the shelf. The doctor tries to escape while the creature has its face covered with its hair, and in Maddie's horrified gaze, the creature takes the doctor's trophy, catches up to her, and tells her that it's time for her to see what cancer has become, and proceeds to dig the punch. Then Maddie reacts back at her home, where everything is in order. The next day at the crime scene, Ree tells the officer that the doctor was murdered with one of her awards, and then Whitney tells him that they are only halfway through as the top part is missing. Koa then finds a photo of one of Dr. Reedy's patients, which indicates that she kept records of all her patients and that she was a reconstructive surgeon for children. Now we are with the creature that removes the round part surrounding the dagger-shaped part of the trophy to then sharpen it significantly. The blows cause the woman who is imprisoned to wake up and try to break free, but the creature throws the weapon it created at her and tells her not to even try. The next day, Maddie tells her sister that she saw the doctor die as if she were in her house and in hers at the same time. Now we are with the investigators who are reviewing the number of photos in the doctor's files. Rek goes home, and Kikoa asks a colleague to advance the photo he found by about 30 years. Now we are with this man who is talking on the phone about the doctor's death. Then he sees that the window is open, and as he approaches to close it, he notices a small puddle of water from which some footprints lead to the wardrobe that immediately goes dark. The man peeks out and turns on the lights but sees nothing unusual. Then, while reaching for a towel, he notices that the door is trying to close. He checks but sees nothing there either. He dries the water off the floor and the window is open again. As he closes it, he sees the creature behind him, which then seems to hide under the bed. Now we are with Maddie, who falls asleep in the middle of the storm. She turns around and upon opening her eyes, finds herself face to face with the old man in her bed. She is quite scared and surprised, screams, and tries to move, but once again the creature paralyzes her. Here we can understand that the creature wants her to see how it is finishing off everyone. Now we see how the place begins to transform as the strange creature emerges. Maddie can only move her eyes as the creature passes over her, landing on the doctor and drawing the weapon. The doctor wakes up and the creature stabs him in the chest with the weapon, then in the face, and continues until he is completely stiff. After this, he proceeds to wink at Maddie. They notice that the creature appears from behind but acts as if it is facing them. After that, Maddie wakes up quite scared and screaming. Her sister arrives and tells her that he is there, but Sydney tells her that it is just a nightmare. She also notices that Maddie is still bleeding. Maddie tells her sister that this time she was able to see the creature's face. Now the sisters go to the investigators, and Maddie tells them that she saw the creature kill someone. The investigators do not believe her, so Sydney tells them that they should go verify, and if it is not true, they will arrest them. Maddie gives them the address and they arrive at the location. There, Maddie tells them it is on the top floor. After checking some apartments, they find one with the door open, and upon entering the bedroom, they discover the body with a disfigured face. Later, Maddie creates a portrait, and Reek asks her if he should look for a character from an animated creature, as if he were mocking her, and Maddie retreats to the bathroom. While in the bathroom, the lights begin to flicker. Then Maddie receives a call, and she is greeted with the name Emily. She corrects them, but the creature tells her that is the name her false mother gave her and made her believe that what she heard before was just her imagination, so it will make them pay for it. Maddie tells Gabriel not to do it, and he replies that deep down she knew who he was. Maddie and Sydney leave the place, and now the officer asks his partner for the photo. He replies that there is no need for the photo since he just spoke with the person, and he confirms that the one in the photo is Maddie. Back with Maddie, she tells her sister that she already knows who the killer is and that they need to go somewhere. Upon arriving, they encounter Maddie's adoptive mother, who asks if she had more siblings at the time of the adoption. The mother replies no. Then Maddie asks who Gabriel is, and the mom is quite surprised. Later, it shows her a recording where Maddie is going to celebrate her birthday with no other children than her friend Gabriel. Her mom asked if he was her imaginary friend. They then fast forward the recording to where Maddie is seen talking on a toy phone, in which she asks the other person not to hurt the baby. The mother tells her that they thought it was just an invention for companionship and that supposedly it would pass with time. She also mentions that some of the conversations she had with Gabriel really gave her chills. We return to Kikoa, who finds some USB drives. He decides to play one of them and discovers a video from July 23, 1992. The video features Mrs. Weaver, in which an Emily speaks about having visions and hearing the thoughts of the demon. She also mentions that she has been in contact with a doctor named John Gregory and another named Victor Fields. Kikoa, in the same memory he plugged into the computer, sees a photo with the doctor and the two aforementioned doctors. When he searches for John Gregory on Google, he finds his address We return to Maddie, who, while brushing her hair, is confronted by the doctor. At that moment, she becomes paralyzed, and the room begins to change. When she finishes, she sees the doctor in a bathtub, and the lights start to flicker. From behind her, that thing appears, and we just see how the detective arrives at the scene. When the detective manages to enter the apartment, it is already too late. The doctor is stiff with the bathtub full of blood. Maddie is there trying to talk to him, but she is not heard. And when he turns around, that thing jumps on him, and they start fighting. When that strange creature hears the gunshots, it runs away, and the detective chases it for a while until they reach a rather desolate place. While there, they start fighting again, but that thing escapes once more. Koa goes and talks to Maddie and company, where she tells them that she was treated by the 3 doctors mentioned earlier. But Maddie says she doesn't remember anything that happened to her before being adopted. And the detective also tells her that her real name is Emily Mai. Madison is suggested to see a hypnotherapist to help her release repressed memories. The process begins, and Maddie remembers when she was first adopted. She also recalls Gabriel, but she is the only one who can see him. However, every time she mentions Gabriel, her adoptive mother scolds her, insisting that there is no Gabriel, and says that whenever Gabriel did something wrong, she was blamed for it. We see how young Maddie talks to Gabriel through a toy phone, and he apparently told her to take a knife because her parents were sleeping. We see Maddie standing with the knife right in front of the cake, but the room starts to change, and it turns out it wasn't the cake. It was her parents that she was going to cut. Maddie, in the present, starts to scream desperately as she has these memories. She begins to tell the others that Gabriel did not want her adoptive mother to have her child, that is Sydney, because Gabriel felt that with Sydney's arrival, Madison would no longer need him, and that is exactly what happened. Sydney was born, and Madison forgot about Gabriel until now. Now we are with the person tied up on the rooftop, who manages to free themselves and, when they try to walk, they fall, landing right where Madison and company are. Madison is arrested as she is found guilty, and the weapon used to commit the crimes is also found. All of this was discovered in Madison's house. Madison tries to say that it is not her, that it was Gabriel, but the officer tells her that she is simply a mentally ill person and that when she was a child, the doctors tried to help her and it worked for a moment, but now her illness has returned. The officer begins to insist that she tell the truth, but Madison starts to scream, causing all the lights to explode. Kekoa's phone starts ringing and Madison tells him that she wants to talk to him. During the call, that strange thing tells the detective that it knows him and that he now has its things and wants them back. The detective asks Gabriel who he is, and Gabriel responds by saying that he is a product of Maddie's imagination before proceeding to laugh. Gabriel tells the detective that he asks Maddie what she used to call him, and Maddie says she used to call him the demon. On the other hand, we are with Sydney, who arrives at the abandoned place where they had Maddie. When she enters, the first thing she finds is a graffiti that says, "Welcome to Hell." Maddie ends up being locked in a cell where there are many more people. Sydney, for her part, arrived at the basement of the abandoned place, and there she found the files of Emily, that is, Maddie. She also found some floppy disks, and upon arriving home, she started to play them. They show a girl named Serena Mai, who says that her mother does not want to take care of her because she was a mistake and is an offense to God, as she was the result of a rape. She also says that she does not know how to take care of them alone, and mentions that he is an abomination, and finally asks to please take care of Emily, that is Maddie. Sydney's mother says that she had been told that the girl in the video had died during childbirth. Returning to the detective, he is with the woman who was tied up on the rooftop, and oh surprise, she is Serena Mai, Madison's biological mother. Returning to Sydney, she is watching another video in which Madison is interviewed. She begins to explain that Gabriel makes her more aggressive and urges her to kill people. Even Gabriel makes her stronger to confront individuals who are twice her size. And now they show the back of Madison and she literally has Gabriel on her back. The doctor says that Gabriel is a parasitic twin. So I suppose that all this time Madison has been carrying Gabriel with her, simply covering him with her hair. That's why I asked you earlier if you noticed that the creature seems to be facing away, but acts as if it is facing Madison. The girls in the cell start to bother her. Returning to Sydney, we see her continuing to watch videos, and Madison, as a child, had things placed on her back and she could know what they were thanks to Gabrielle. Madison is thrown to the ground and they start kicking her. We see how Emily, that is, young Madison, was electrocuted, and returning to Madison, she begins to convulse. We continue watching a video, and here a doctor explains to us that that thing she has is literally connected to her brain and can make her believe that she is still living her normal life. They also show us the operation in which they attempt to remove the evil twin from Emily, but they only took out the body. Let's remember that when it comes to the brain, they are also connected. Returning to Madison, Gabriel literally starts to emerge from Madison's head, frightening all the inmates. This thing begins to take out all the girls who were there, and finally targets one of those who was kicking Madison on the ground. It digs its fingers into her eyes, and when a police officer arrives to try to shoot, it uses her as a shield, approaches the officer, grabs him, and leaves him stiff before stealing the keys. Returning to Sydney, she tells her that through a call, everything we have already seen is recounted, that Gabriel is still inside Madison and can still control her body. Sydney also says that when Derek hit him on the head with that, it woke up Gabriel. We are with this officer who was organizing the evidence. She hears gunshots, which were also heard by Keikoa, Madison's parasite trying to find its suit and weapon. The officer who was there sees how the parasite grabs its things and leaves. When Keikoa climbs up, he sees many of his fellow officers lying stiff on the ground. For a good while, we watch as that thing takes out many officers. That thing grabs an officer and literally pulls the bones out through her hands. Now Madison wakes up to a bunch of dead officers next to her. After this, the fighting continues for a while as Koa and his companions, badly injured, try to escape, but that thing hits them with a chair and then proceeds to escape. We are with Sydney. She is going to see Madison's biological mother because she knows that strange thing is coming for her. But while she is talking to a guard who tells her she can't pass, she starts to feel unwell, saying that her pacemaker is burning her, and out of nowhere it explodes, leaving her stiff, and right there, the evil twin appears. Yu-san tells Sydney that he was going to leave her for last, since Madison chose Sydney before him, that he is her own blood and is literally connected to her. But just then, Madison's mother wakes up and tells Gabriel to forgive him, that she should have never abandoned him. When it seemed that Gabriel was going to give up, the detective suddenly appears and starts shooting. That thing stabs him with a knife, but the officer manages to hit it with a bullet. Sydney grabs the weapon and tries to make Madison take control of her body, while the evil twin tells her to shoot, to kill her. However, that thing throws the stretcher at Sydney, leaving her neutralized and taking the weapon. Sydney shouts the truth at Madison, telling her to take control and revealing that it was actually her twin brother who killed her babies. Let's remember that she had many miscarriages, and this was because her twin brother was feeding on them to become stronger. We see how Maddie, who was watching everything paralyzed, starts to move, but before she can do anything, that thing delivers a devastating headshot to Sydney. It then approaches her mother and begins to choke her until she goes completely stiff, and the place starts to change for Gabriel. This is where he comes face to face with Maddie, and here we realize that he hasn't actually killed Sydney. They start arguing over who deserves Madison's body, and in the end, Maddie leaves him trapped there. Madison regains her body and helps her sister escape. In the end, the two sisters embrace, and their mother is still alive. And that's how the brat who wanted attention ends up but became rebellious because he didn't get it. Let me know what you thought of the movie in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe by activating the bell, and don't forget to brush your teeth before going to bed.